Good evening. Hello. Can everybody hear me? Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? Did everybody enjoy the pizza? Can you turn it up just a little bit, Kristen? Can you turn my mic up a little bit? People are having a hard time hearing. Yep, there we go. Okay, how about now? Can everybody hear me? Kristen, a little more, a little louder. Okay, what about now? Can you hear me now? All right. So how's everybody doing tonight? So I am Joel Westfall, and as usual, it is my honor to be the Deputy Director here at the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum. I'd like to thank you all for coming on down tonight and coming to what we're lovingly refer to as a very unique event here at the Gerald R. Ford. I'm sure that the majority of you in the audience know that in 50 plus years ago today, 4 boys arrived from Liverpool and landed in JFK and were greeted by a crowd that not even heads of state at that time had received. When we got the exhibit from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we thought about evenings such as this. And I really want to thank you all for being here tonight. I'd also like to thank the Ford Foundation, who makes events like this possible. Your contributions to Friends of Ford make this type of event truly something that we can make happen. And I would like now at this time to introduce the Executive Director of the Ford Foundation, who will introduce our wonderful panel tonight, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Calvaruso.
Thank you, Joel. It's great to be here. Again, as Joel said, I'm the Executive Director of the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Foundation, and I certainly want to thank a number of the supporters that are out there. That's what makes these wonderful programs possible. You know, when we looked at getting louder than words here from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we were excited to think about the opportunity, so we were able to provide some different programs than we usually do, as in tonight, and what a perfect fit. It's wonderful to see so many people. We still got people coming in from overflow parking lots, so thank you for coming. By popular demand, we're also webcasting this on Facebook, so thank you Facebook followers out there for tuning in tonight. You know, we had quite a following and from our last program. It's, in fact, Steve Aldridge from our last panelist in January. He's also here joining us. He's going to be in the green room. He's going to come out and join us, so it's great to have a following from one program to the next. I'd like to also thank Tyler Leshadone for thinking of this idea, and C4PR. And what a great partnership with 97 LAV FM. It's been a perfect fit, and they've been broadcasting live. So I hope tonight, as you sit back and you think about the DJs that brought this to Grand Rapids in that period of time, and those of you who haven't went up and saw the exhibit yet, tying the presidents to the music through the ages really brings it all home. Joining us today is Rob Bryant. Rob is a proud third-generation broadcaster, and his claim to fame is not only his grandfather and father in the business, he's joined in. He did wait until the age of 13 before he got in the industry. In Victorville, California, when he went on the air on his dad's AM radio station. 24 years at WLAV this month, so thank you for coming out. He's currently the program director and afternoon host of WLAV. Was there a number of you from the last program that came and joined us? Yeah, there's some hands. Well, I don't know if you remember, and Steve was one of them. He was sitting here, and he was kind of looking at me as I was introducing all these people. Well, did I not know that the marketing person at WLAV sent me, I don't know, the resumes were 5 or 10 years, so they were all doing different jobs as I introduced them. And I was wondering where the snafu came up. It was actually at the radio station. They said it wasn't intentional, but I think they were all having a good time here tonight. So I double-checked everybody, and I think I got the right job description. Was I okay on yours, Rob? Great, thank you, sir. The radio voice of Kevin Matthews has been heard on Midwest radio for over 25 years. He was on 3 signals in Chicago alone. You know, he did start his career here in Grand Rapids in 1978. You know, and as he says, he returned to his beloved Grand Rapids, and we're certainly glad to have him back here. You know, his wit, his self-effacing humor informs his quest to live well with MS. Thank you so much for doing that. You know, he shares his world, real and imaginary, in 2 weekly podcast episodes that showcase his unique theater of the mind. And what's not on his resume that I'm going to share, and maybe some of you were listening when his partner and sidekick, Jim Shorts, was choking on a chicken bone when he was doing the Whitecaps broadcast. And, you know, many to this day claim that you saved Jim Shorts' life. And I hope that won't be too much for you to share that story tonight on how that happened. You continued the broadcast as well as save your partner.
Jim's dead.
Yeah. So he's going to share that story with us tonight. Michele Mccormick is a co-host of WLAV Mornings. She has been a staple in Grand Rapids for many years. She's a Michigan native, been pivotal in taking part in executing many charity events in Michigan as all our panelists have been supportive of charities and causes here. It's great to have them supporting our community. She is now currently airing with her former competition, Tony Gates, where they have a blast for you, those of you that listen in, and they continue their top ratings for people watching their show. A great friend of the foundation and supporter is Andy Rent. Andy, Michelle's got to come out. There you go, Michele. Well, I think she wants to sit in the middle where the moderators sport. Jay, I kind of thought she would. Well, Jay and her worked together at WGRD for a period of time in their earlier lives. Yeah, and so I think they'll share that story with you later as well. Andy Rent from Muncie, Indiana. He started his career while he was in college. He started as a weatherman, radio host, combo, TV8, both TV and radio simultaneously as they did in their early years. And Andy is quite possibly the most recognized personality in West Michigan, having done both radio and TV for a substantial number of years. And again, as the other broadcasters, we owe a deep thank you to Andy for his continued support in the community. And I don't know how he does all the boards and things that he does. He's continuously involved. Andy still broadcasts on 100.5 The River. Our moderator for tonight is a longtime familiar name with us, Jay Swearinga. And Jay is probably better known as Jay Allen for over 20 years in Michigan radio. He worked for all the major radio stations. Him and Michele go back to WGRD, and they're going to be sharing some story about that. And Michelle's actually taken Jay's spot, so this will start off with a huge bang. Jay actually started with Christian rock in the Holland, Michigan area. For the last 15 years, he's had a great following. He's worked at Fox Motors here in Grand Rapids, serving his clientele. As you can see, there's quite a following. Thank you for the wonderful turnout. Let's give our 4 panelists and moderator a great Gerald R. Ford Museum turnout. Welcome. Thank you. Applause.
Gotta be green. There we go. We're gonna have some fun here. This started out around a campfire up in Newaygo. Tyler and myself have a trailer. We're trailer trash on the weekends, folks, so we love it. And he's talking about this exhibit coming to the museum, and what can we do to have some fun to kind of generate some business or just interest in it. And so we started talking about old DJs and what it was like way back when. And we said, why don't we just get some good people together and let them tell some wonderful stories, what it's like to be in Grand Rapids radio, and how much that influenced their lives and all of our lives as well. I grew up listening to LAV. That was my station. If my parents touched the dial and moved from 96.9 on my Onkyo receiver, it was all over. It was my favorite radio station. It still is. We're just wonderful to have all these people with us here this morning, so in the evening. So we're going to start with a gentleman who actually was...
Never worked at LAV.
Never, not one day.
Not one day.
No.
Is that a Grand Rapids radio station?
Grand Rapids radio station,
Okay.
yes. We're going to start with a gentleman who was around 54 years ago. Now, we might have been around 54, but we weren't doing radio or anything like that. Andy Rent was down in Muncie, Indiana at Ball State University at the radio station at the university when the Beatles broke.
Well, I remember as a small child on my mother's knee at the time when the Beatles came to town. She told me what they were, and I had no clue until that time. No, yeah. Okay, yeah. I was in college.
Played their records?
I played their records, yeah. I was in college.
I was just checking to see if my mic was on, and so I just wanted, are you sure? They all work, so go ahead and say the story.
They all works. So you guys can insult me as much as you want. Yeah.
No, I'm not, Andy.
I'm used to it. I'm old. I can take it.
No, you're not.
So we were in college, and the Beatles came. My parents, my dad had bought this little record store that was in the village on the campus, or just off campus, for us to run. He thought this would be a cool thing so that we could have a job and earn our way through college and work for
Parents
him.
bought you a record store?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
Wait a minute. I had to flip burgers when I was 14. Are
Seriously.
you kidding?
My dad fed me dog food. I mean, it was like out in the backyard. A record store.
What? That's so cool.
yeah, well, it
Awesome.
sucked to be you. So
Here we go.
So anyway, it's the British invasion and the Beatles, and it still was so odd because if you remember back, the Beatles came just like 3 months after Kennedy had been assassinated. So that was really a tough time in the country. And on campus, I mean, we were like shell-shocked. And I was in radio, so I was broadcasting when Kennedy was assassinated. And someone came into our office, and we're just all hanging around, we're all kids anyway. Yes, I did go to school with David Letterman. And so we were all hanging out. And someone came in and said, the president's been assassinated. And we said, yeah, right. No, you got to come down. And he had the old teletype machines, and the news came off the teletype machines and was printing it out. And we stood around there with our mouths wide open, and the campus shut down. 3 months later is the British invasion, and the Beatles come. And that sort of changed the tune a little bit because finally, we were recovering somewhat. But then you had this British invasion, these long-haired guys, and this music you were playing, but hadn't seen them before, and the country went crazy.
I remember they were going to run a clip on CBS Evening News about the Beatles the day the president got shot.
Yeah.
So they stuck it in the back room. And about 2 months or so later, Walter Cronkite was looking for a feel-good story to end up his news broadcast. They brought it back out, and that's really how it started, where the people started knowing, because nobody knew who the Beatles were. They never heard of the Beatles, and all of a sudden, you couldn't keep the records on the store.
No, and we had this little record store, and we were selling 45s, of course, and we were selling hundreds at a time. I mean, as fast as we could get them in, people were buying them, and it cost you all of 99 cents for a record, you know, for a 45. And the album was $3.99. I mean, that was big money back then. So we couldn't keep them on the shelves. People were going, and I kept thinking, Beatles, what's going on?
Right. No, it was amazing stories. Now, that started the British invasion, but as it continued, of course, more bands were coming. Kevin's been doing this for a very, very long time as well, and I think you've got plenty of stories of different bands that you...
No, I was just, Andy, did you keep any of the 45s and then later sell them and become the billionaire that you are? I mean, think about that.
That's what I'm thinking.
You know?
Where did you get your money?
No.
London radio.
Through this record store. You know, I do have...
But don't you wish that you would have kept that?
The original
Yeah,
45s,
yeah, the
you never
original.
thought about it back then. Now, Kathy and I have a lot of 45s, old 45s, and I literally haven't gone through them for years, so I don't know what I have in there. Yeah, wouldn't that been the great thing to think
So
forward?
at what point when you were working in radio on the campus and the British invasion happened, then does a lot of your programming...
We were never allowed to play Beatles music.
Really?
It was
What?
college radio, and it was really
Sounds excellent.
stuffy.
Sounds like a lot of program directors I've worked for. We're not going to play these guys. They're not going anywhere. Trust me.
Losers, they're not even from this country. Get them out of
Flash
here.
in the
Hey,
pan.
thank you very much.
So you couldn't play the Beatles?
Oh, no. You couldn't play the Beatles at all.
Wow.
No, that was college. Then if you had like small little radio stations, Letterman had a little station in the dorm. It was like carrier current. So he could play anything, he'd do anything he wanted to within his dorm, but it only went into the dorm and listeners there. So we did stuff like that, but no, not on broadcast radio, never.
So this is the mid-'60s. Now we rolled to the
Yeah.
mid-'70s, and a lot of things were happening in Grand Rapids that I was not aware of, how much Grand Valley State had influenced through LAV and what was
No,
going
I
on.
shocked you backstage.
Yes, you did.
And then, I got to say, if I can, it's really great to be out. I don't get out much. And thank you very much. You know, but Michele, it's really nice to see Michele, and she and I start a new morning show come Monday, we'll tell you about. But anyways, I was looking at your notes, and Whitney Houston's not British.
She could
Okay,
be.
So, go ahead. But
I brought
no, I was
Wikipedia
saying,
notes.
I really didn't, there's not really a British invasion when you think about it. I was thinking about that, and I got a new book coming out. It's called The Queen, Poppycock, and Rock. But really, when you think about it, the Beatles, they were influenced by everybody on Sun Records and Chess Records. So really, they stole it from America.
They did. Memphis was the big influence of the
You bet.
Beatles and Elvis. Lennon said,
Right.
if there hadn't been an Elvis, there wouldn't be the Beatles.
And I was thinking today, because you were saying Grand Valley. Anybody go to Grand Valley here? Okay.
Have kids that go to Grand Valley?
Go to Grand Valley, but we, LAV The Heritage, first of all, I want to recognize Steve Aldridge, who I think left. He's got something to do.
I think he's actually, there he is right there.
There he is, Steve Aldridge. He and I were roommates, okay, at Grand Valley. That should tell you a lot. Now, I also want to thank Ed Buchanan and Eris Hampers, okay, because while I'm in the dorm listening to those guys with the deep voices, not knowing where they're coming from, but they sounded really cool, Steve and I were on this little 10-watt radio station at Grand Valley. We eventually lost that radio station because I was doing the morning show, and I got up and I said that Aaron Lubbers, the president, was murdered. And we only have a half day. Well, anyways, seriously, I'm not making it up. I'm quite proud of that. His dismembered body was all over campus. And then, anyways, they took the station away from us, the FCC and the campus. They turned it into a hair salon. True story. But the British invasion, for me, really started in the 70s. Really, it was Jimi Hendrix, because I was in fifth grade, and I was in Rochester, and I was listening to Jimi Hendrix, Axis Bold of Love, and that just changed my life. But then eventually, to me, the British invasion, we played the first ever, the Sex Pistols. Never mind the Bullocks, thank you very much, on campus. And a student came in, and we're playing God Save the Queen, and he rips the tone arm off, takes the album, the British import, and smashes it. And I said to Steve, we got to get another copy because we're onto something. So that, to me, is the British invasion, the Sex Pistols. Wow. Thank you very much.
Great story. Thank you. I got to tell you, Kevin saw those guys doing a morning show together. Real briefly, Michelle and I were doing a morning show at GRD about 20 years ago.
I'm such a morning whore.
Yeah, well, no.
That's what it is.
We're together
You said
for
it, not
6
me.
months.
Yeah, I didn't say a word.
Sorry. I've worked
Crazy
with a
radio
few.
can be. We're watching the 6 o'clock news on TV 8 on a Wednesday night, and our program director at the time was Phil Catlett. He comes on TV wearing a Kev Head baseball cap. Now, he's our program director and our general manager of the station that we do the morning show on. We're thinking, what the heck is... Oh, we got big news. We got a new morning show starting on Friday. That's how we found out that we were being replaced. So, Kevin...
It was Kevin.
We'll have it in for Kevin for a very long... No, just Kevin.
Wow.
That's how
Recorded
crazy
you.
this industry can
Yeah,
be. You
and
just never
the
know.
problem with the morning show, I was over in Chicago, is that you guys would run Tuesday's show on Wednesday.
Yeah, we
and it really
recorded it
didn't
on
make
GRD.
sense.
Well, the first clue
That's
was...
the same program director that said to Andy, don't play the Beatles.
Yeah. The first clue was we went into work that morning, and I go, Jay, there's equipment in the hallway. Don't worry about it. I go, no, it looks like automation equipment. Nah, what the hell do you know? And then that night, on the news, Kev's coming. They recorded him from Chicago to bring him back to town on WGRD for a minute. You did that for a minute.
Well, it
before
didn't make
coming
sense because you're running Tuesday's show on Wednesday.
Right.
I wonder why it
Right.
didn't work.
Well, we're glad having Kevin back. Kevin's been just a charm for the community and what you've done in the past and the talent this guy has. I still love
Oh,
it.
I don't know about that.
The Cavalcade of Sports was about the best you did on television back in Chicago. So, Rob Brandt, you've been kind of quiet. You've been doing this for a long time.
Very long time.
And this
Yes.
you're a third generation.
Third generation. I actually called my dad to get the rundown. It's a lot of call letters here. My grandfather put on the air WCEN in Mount Pleasant, AM and FM,
I love that station.
about
They
1948.
couldn't play the Beatles.
Well, actually,
Glenn Miller twofers, it was awesome.
they did.
Ray Conniff Singers.
He owned stations in Fremont, Whitehall, and Big Rapids as well. But my roots of rock and roll go back to my father, who did a show called Groove Yard. 7:30 to 9. This was 1960 to 1963, and it was Mount Pleasant's, Mid-Michigan's chance to rock out. So there was like a little bit of a Footloose thing going up there, that he's playing that rock and roll, followed by Starlight Symphony. Much like when Ed and Eris were on the air, you had the middle of the road music from 6 a.m. or 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then Eris and Buck would play a progressive rock from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was weird, but that eventually made for the LAV that you know today. And then after that, my grandfather loaned, didn't give, $50,000 to my dad to buy an AM radio station in Pueblo, Colorado.
You
had
guys
to
are
pay
so
back every
lucky,
dime.
man, to have parents that love you.
Right, I flipped burgers.
Yeah.
Really?
And I went on the air in
Michelle.
Michelle, California in 1976.
Now, you backstage were saying you had a show called Cowabunga or something.
Shut up.
What was it?
That was Contraband.
It was called Contraband.
Okay, and no, wait. And I said save it to when we get on stage. Contraband. So was it a breaking new bands?
Yes, it was all
Wow.
new stuff. Well,
What was it?
it was all new music. It was all new, and again, it was the Clash, because the Clash was new. Which I have a Clash story when it's my time.
Well, it's your time now.
Oh,
because
he
I
wasn't
wanted to-
done.
Oh, I'm fine.
Now,
He's my boss right now. I can't disrespect him.
he's not mine. He fired me.
He was.
I did not. You did. You did not.
To this
Was.
crazy business?
He was.
No.
Now, see, you talk about the Clash. Now,
listen.
did you go to the Clash when they were here at the Civic?
I did not go to the Clash in the
Why?
Pacific because I was up at Central Michigan University.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of time. Anyways, see, Steve and I, we met the Clash when Joe Strummer had fake teeth. His teeth were knocked out.
Okay, so tell us about your Joe Strummer story.
Well, that's it.
Oh,
He
really?
spit on us from the
He knocked
audience.
his teeth out?
And then he made money and got dentures. So that's my Clash story. is
Well-
that Joe Strummer was spitting, and we were so close.
Great.
Joe spit hit me.
Great.
It was
That's
awesome.
great.
It was awesome.
I may or may not have made out with him.
Okay, again, you can't remember.
Being a woman in radio is a completely different scene than being a guy in radio because bands really want to meet you. Really want to meet you. So when they spit on you, it's on purpose. It's
No, it
not
wasn't.
true.
Not if you don't have teeth. It's not.
No. When we talk about British invasion, mine is I was coming up in, I went to the raft race. You guys, raft races at LAV? Come on now. I grew up here in Grand Rapids, the raft race. But I was a pop music person. And so the old White House up on Lafayette, the Hi There, WGRD, okay? The Hi There sign, did you go by? Heck yeah. So I made my parents drive by the Hi There sign so I could wave back as if it knew I drove by. So for me, I started at WGRD here in Grand Rapids when I went to Central, and I point because one of my CMU, hey, Dad, my high school girl. Anyway, we went to CMU together. So, but I started at GRD when I drive back from CMU to work part-time there when I was 19, and that to me was a huge deal because I grew up listening to all those guys too on LAV and GRD. And so for me, British invasion was pop music. And then when I was in college, a band called The Clash happened. And we were like, what is going on? These four socialist crazy guys from England over here playing this in-your-face music. And every single student was like, yeah. And here you had Reagan in the White House. And we were all going, yeah, screw everything. You know, The Clash. That to me was my British invasion.
Well,
and then Elton John. And
when
We
we
got
were in
fired from WGRD.
yeah, probably.
I did not fire you from
No, you
WGRD.
didn't. But my wife and I just got married here in Grand Rapids, okay? I proposed to her New Year's over at the theater over here. And then I got hired, I got hired to do mornings, WGRD, and Chuck Bailey, the program director, hated
him.
me.
I loved him.
Oh, he was such an
I loved
ass.
Chuck
Just
Bailey.
such a
Are you
dumbass.
kidding me? Genius.
A genius, yeah. He's selling cars now in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Remember Rockin' Ray Baker?
Folks, it's been a wonderful evening.
Oh, you selling
The doors
cars?
are there.
There's nothing
Enjoy
wrong
the
with
rest
that.
of the night.
Selling cars, somebody's got to do it. But I just remember, we got married, and all of a sudden, I over there doing mornings. He hated the morning show, so he put me on overnights. And he got the morning show. So I knew that he was sleeping from like 10 o'clock until 1, he's sleeping. And that is when Steve Aldridge and he was giving me all these British imports. So I was playing The Clash on British imports and everything. We were playing everything. He came in one day and he said, what? And he's swearing, what are you doing at my radio station? I was playing the Stray Cats. And it was Dave Edmonds produced it over in London, da-da-da-da-da. And what was so funny, he fired me. And then, like, that year, he's playing everything I played, the Go-Go's, the Stray Cats, everything. I hated him.
He was
And then I got
brilliant.
hired at LAV.
He was genius.
No, he
I
wasn't. He
remember
was
back
such
in the
a...
days.
Chuck Bailey,
In the
absolutely.
early days, when we're back, maybe back in the, because I did something on LAV called Sunday Morning Skylines, a Christian rock show. You ran from 7 to 9 on Sunday mornings after Laura DeYoung left. So I never got to play a lot of the music you guys were playing, but all the albums would have like the labels where of each song, and then they'd be checked. Only a few, 4 or 5 songs you could play off an album. And you had to make a documentation that you played it so the next guy doesn't play the same song, so it doesn't sound like radio does now. Sometimes they keep playing over and over again. It was a little more verified. What I'm wondering is, back in those days, how much freedom did you guys really have to just play something without the PD coming in and saying, that's not the cut you're supposed to be playing?
Well, and again, the heritage here in Grand Rapids, and it goes back to, you know, what I learned at college radio station, getting fired and getting kicked off that station, and then getting kicked off WGRD, and then
Don't point at
landing.
me. I didn't kick you off.
But I had a chance. Remember the Fox 101 here?
Yeah.
Well, Ed Buchanan got fired from LAV, and he came over and he programmed it.
I didn't
But
fire Ed.
There's a running. No, but LAV's fired a lot of people.
Yeah.
And anyways, but the thing is, what I loved about Ed is he was the program director, and Ed let you go. And I owe my career to Ed Buchanan and what he did.
Did you have the card box that we used to have to follow? You had the file cards where you would have like your currents.
Yeah.
You'd have your recurrents, your oldies. You'd have different categories, and so there was always that one real crappy song that nobody wanted to
Ed
play.
let me do anything I wanted to. If I said, Ed, can I do this, whatever. Funny thing is, I can remember the Eagles. The music companies and record companies, they would give LAV a copy of an Eagles new release, and then the Fox 101 was competition, and you played it in its entirety at 6 o'clock, okay? Well, I was on at 6 o'clock. That was my shift, and my job was to get the Eagles album. It's brand new out of the box, and I queued it up. And I'm like, okay, here's the Eagles, everybody, on Fox 101. And then I hit it, and it just starts, it goes, Hotel California. And so many people were so ticked because they used to record that on cassettes. But the heritage here in Grand Rapids is due to because of Ed Buchanan and Eris Hampers and Doc Donovan. And it went on to motivate people in Chicago, New York, LA, the heritage that LAV had, and will always have, I hope, is rooted so deep here in Grand Rapids.
That's been going on for I don't know how many years at LA.
Too long.
Yeah.
I mean, when it first started.
Too long.
Yeah, no, we dropped that a while back.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
I'm just.
No, that's okay.
Those are the things I remember.
There was a point where we had to, where the people are aging out of our demo, and so that's when we started playing Soundgarden, and we stopped doing some of the stuff that we'd done all the time, 2 for Tuesdays, block party weekends, and stuff like that. And you just try to reinvent the wheel.
I remember like you used to do the one-a-days.
Yeah.
Back when the albums came out, they'd play the whole album left, both sides at midnight, the latest album. We're talking about this in the back. Anybody here starting to listen to vinyl again? Or is it just, I've started doing it. Vinyl is great. It's great. Now, we were talking back about you guys maybe doing something.
Yeah,
with
we're doing
that
it this
now.
weekend. Well, the interesting thing is when the CDs came out, everybody's like, this is great, it's clear, it's clean. And then all of a sudden we realized they're clipping off the high ends. There's no high end in here. When you look at it in a waveform, it's like, what are they doing? This isn't actually as a fidelity as we had expected. And so you go back and listen to the vinyl in a good heavyweight piece of vinyl, you're like, wow, there's so much room and separation between the instruments and a well-produced record. And so this Saturday, the 40th anniversary of Van Halen's first album, I've got vinyl, and we're gonna actually track the damn album. Oh, how creative is that? But we're gonna actually track the album a couple of times, not interrupt it. We'll play side one, and we'll be right back with side two, like in the old days. And that's what we're gonna do. And it's interesting that we're talking about that now because we just decided to, when it works, we'll do it.
It's for stoners. Just say it.
That's why we're going to probably air it at noon and at 10.
How many stoners do we have out
We're
here?
gonna play it
tonight?
at 4:20.
Just checking. Okay.
We're gonna do it at 4:20.
Oh, I can't be the only one.
No, you are.
I remember one time I was doing the Sunday morning the Sunday Christian rock show on LAV, and I started at 7 o'clock in the morning, and there was always little mementos left from the overnight guys at LAV. So here's the turntable, and there's this little tiny, I guess we call it a roach, I'm not sure, but it's sitting at their turntable, and I start playing my music, and I get a call from somebody saying, hey, I forgot who was doing the overnight. It wasn't Ogie Dreyer, I can't remember, but they just said, so-and-so was playing Quadrophenia by The Who, and he didn't play side 4. Now, how somebody sat up from 5 o'clock in the morning till 7, listened to The Who, 4 sides, and knew that he didn't play the 4th side.
That's funny.
That was some pretty good stuff.
That's funny.
How about you guys? What are some of the strangest things that's happened in your career? And I know we could go forever on that, but Andy, you start. Just something that was so bizarre. Why did this happen? Could be a program director that's asked you to do something stupid. I remember Rick Beckett, I worked with him, he had all kinds of stories about a minor bird down in Florida. I don't know.
See, some I worked with, some I didn't, and Kevin and I worked together when the Fox 101.3 became WCUZ and it turned country. So FM, it put FM.
But it was
country on
really
FM.
great country. And Ed Buchanan
And
stayed
Ed
there.
Buchanan programmed it.
Right.
And it was like a real,
George Jones, Waylon, Willie. It was awesome.
and then Eagles and
Yeah.
and Conway Twitty, one of my favorites. So,
Conway Twitty was at the Ionia Free Fair. We went out there. It's great. He's hawking, he's selling 8-tracks, right? People get them home, there's nothing on them. I love that. That's so true.
Hello, darling.
And again, the stories that you can tell on all these bands, man.
When I moved to town, I worked at Channel 8 and then Wood Radio. And Wood AM at the time was a dominant radio station. FM wasn't really a factor in the market at that time. And FM really, when you guys think FM really started taking off with diverse formats and stuff, a little bit later on in the 70s, really. So AM radio, so Wood Radio played everything. And Bruce Grant was the morning guy on Wood Radio. A lot of you guys remember Bruce Grant. Probably the craziest thing I remember about Bruce Grant was that when he was strangling one of the people that worked for us, the program director, speaking of program directors, came in and thought that Bruce was running his, you ran your own board, you controlled your own levels, and then you had an engineer who just kind of watched you and stared at you. So then he thought Bruce ran things too loud. So as Bruce was doing his show, he came up behind him, reached over, and turned down, and by that time you had big pots, faders, and he turned it down. Bruce finished and said, "I'll be back in just a minute." Leaps out of his chair, grabs Bill by the neck, throws him on the ground, and strangles him. Engineer, about
Anger
3 other guys
issues.
come running in, I
Something.
know,
Wow.
and pull him off and said, "Don't ever do that again." Program director never showed up again. Was never, always phoned in his part from there on. That's probably the craziest
That's a
thing
good
I
one.
saw.
How about you, Michelle? You've been in this for a long time.
I was working with another Kevin. Sorry. I was doing mornings here with Michele and Kevin. God, wow. How many partners have you had?
Well, don't get into that now.
Okay, so I was working with a guy named Kevin Gossett. So it was Kevin and Michele in the morning at WGRD. And my job, I was his co-host, and I said, Springsteen was in Detroit on the weekend. And I said, I'm going to go to the Springsteen show, but I'll be on the air with you the next morning. I brought this big Marty equipment with me. You had to have as a satellite thing. I brought it with me in my truck, my car. I had a Mitsubishi Montero was the first year they made them, big SUV. So I took my neighbor, and we go to see Springsteen, and then my job was to get Bruce on the air the next morning. Okay, so they're staying at the Townsend Hotel, which is in help me out, in the Birmingham, thank you, Birmingham. And so that's where they all stayed. So I'm at the Townsend Hotel, and I'm waiting, and I get kicked out. What are you doing with all this marketing and all this? Nothing. I got all this broadcast equipment, headphones. Nothing. I got kicked out. So I'm sitting in my car, and here comes this woman out. She's got long hair, and here comes a guy with her, and here comes another guy, and they're all three see my Marty equipment. They walk over to me, and he goes, "Ma'am, I bet you're looking for Bruce." And I said, "Yeah, Bruce Springsteen. Hi, I recognize you. Hi, but really I want Bruce Springsteen." Well, the Highwaymen were in town too, and it's Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings. No, is there a child in here? No crap. So these guys, and they're like, I'm like, you know what, Kevin? Listen, I don't have Springsteen, but I got Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash. Oh, and June Carter standing here. Dude, he goes, "Oh my God, put them on. What are you doing? Springsteen, screw it. You've got these." So, but I was, again, not, and I was upstairs looking at the Johnny Cash thing, and I'm going, oh, now I go, oh my God, what an impact. And I have now, I've got everything he's ever done. But then I was younger, and I was thinking about, I was pop music, and here's, Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash sitting in my car, and I still have that interview today. And it was, I know. That's great. So that to me is like the craziest thing that ever happened. Springsteen's wife, Patty, came on after, and I'm like, "We have Patty." He goes, "Shut up, you have Johnny Cash."
What happened to Kevin? What happened to Kevin, your partner?
Kevin Gossett went to, he's working in Arizona.
Oh, great. Anyways,
All right, you tell your story.
I got a lot.
Yeah.
I know.
Strangest thing.
I have one time, well, You have a question?
Here, you think I got a question for you because it was one of the most awkward points of my career when a former boss of ours. Do you remember when I had to come in and sit on your show as the program director? Was he mad at me or was he mad at you? Remember when
I have had everybody mad at me. I mean, it's
it's like
Yeah.
you show up and I'm not sure what I was there to do other than get
I don't
up
know.
3 hours earlier than I normally.
I don't know.
Do you remember
I've
Trail?
had people do that. Would you sit in with Kevin and just show him to do things
Make
right?
sure he doesn't. Make sure he
What
doesn't
am I
burn the place
supposed to
Hate
down.
that. When, I don't know.
Play more Zeppelin, Kev. It was.
You know
really
what was
awkward.
great? Again, it's going back to the heritage. Because here I am working now, over at WGRD and the program director. I'm working at LAV overnights and whatever not. And Steve Aldridge, and there's another guy in town called Bruce Parrott. Anybody recognize Bruce Parrott? Okay, Bruce Parrott, and he worked at CUZ overnights,
yeah.
and I worked. I don't even remember. We'd go over to his house, and this is before I got married, and he'd have just your body weight in marijuana at his house. And we would get, the night before, we'd call them oxygen tanks. They're these 40-ounce beers, and it wasn't like Pabst. It was something. It was, I don't know. They were beer, but they were really big. We called them oxygen tanks. And you just sit, and between Bruce and Aldridge, they're all these imports are coming in, okay? And Bruce looks at me, and he holds up an album, and he goes, "Would you do her?" But I'm cleaning that up. And I look and I go,
Thanks.
yeah, I would. It's a guy, it's Boy George. Boom, later on, out comes Boy George, But we're breaking all these bands, from madness to everything. It was great. And especially, where you'd get over to Chicago, I can remember I got a $5,000 fine because there was some folks, I got them out of they were at a funeral. And they called me up and they said, "We don't want to be here. Will you call the funeral home and get us out?" So I called. Anyways, we got an FCC fine, $5,000, because I had somebody on the air. They didn't know. And anyways, Larry Wirt, my general manager, he, filled out the check and it was like, no problem. You just keep getting fined and stuff like that. But the thing is, though, in what I loved about the freedom, anytime you give somebody freedom, and over in Chicago, you're breaking bands. Like I had live studio audience, and I said, "What's your name?" And this guy goes, "Billy. I'm in a band called the Smashing Pumpkins." And like 2 weeks later, the Smashing Pumpkins or Pearl Jam, you're breaking Pearl Jam. You're breaking all these bands, and I think that's what radio's got to do again today. Is there's so much great music out there, is to break bands, and that's how come I play vinyl, play whatever you got to do to entertain you, the audience.
It's like that this Greta Van Fleets having a moment now. These kids have you heard? Thank you.
Again, yeah.
Great band. These Zeppelins sound alike. They're kids. I mean, they're 15, 16, 17. They sound, just Google it when you get home, Greta Van Fleet. They're from Frankenmuth, Michigan. They are on the national scene right now. Crazy. And they're just kids, sound just like Zeppelin, and they're everywhere now. Amazing. And we interviewed them a couple weeks ago before on their tour bus with their moms. I mean, they're so good. Seriously.
What fun is that? I know.
How about you, Rob? You've been doing this for a long time. You're a program director yourself, so you probably got some stories about your own being, doing some stuff. What's the strangest?
Well,
ever
one of
happened to you?
the strangest, I don't know about the strangest. I've got a few stories, some great stories about artists that I've had the pleasure of hanging out with occasionally. One of them was Carlos Santana, Summer Celebration. This was probably about 96. And I had the opportunity to get up on stage in between Rusted Root and Carlos and just say hi. Hi, I'm Rob from WLAV. Thanks for coming out. Don't forget to tip your bartenders and waitresses and whatever. And this was I don't know how many people were there. It just seemed like there was bodies from the front of the stage all the way back. And yeah, it was sold out. I want to say like 50,000 people or so. I don't know. It was a lot. It was one of the greatest thrills of my life to be up in front of all those people. Talk about getting a natural high. But I'm backstage. And I'm actually with a friend of my wife and I's. My wife was out of town, and she'd never been there. We were backstage, and there was this big grassy area with the tables, and it's all secluded. Carlos is running back and forth. Tony shows up and has a skull cap on. It's called a Barboo. A lady named Barb made these skull caps out of jeans. They're really cool. Exactly what Carlos likes. Carlos looks at it. Tony gives it to him. And Carlos thought that was cool. And we're watching people in and out do the, oh my God, I can't believe I'm meeting Carlos. And I'm just sitting there going, hey, what's going on? And right before he goes on stage, gets ready, he walks up to me, because I didn't ask for a picture, I didn't ask for an autograph, and he whispers to me, I feel some fat, luscious licks coming off my guitar for you today, my friend. And I went,
What?
I felt like Wayne and Garth, I'm not worthy. But that was, I'm like,
Pinch me.
pitch, exactly. And I mean, I've always loved Carlos Santana, and I just thought, do you say that to all the guys? But it was just one of the coolest opportunities. You know, it's one of the things that makes the job worth it when you're like, wow, you are a really cool guy, you know?
Only the guys with his hair. Those are the ones he says that to.
Yeah, probably.
I can remember, too, the people that you'd meet out at Grand Valley, you know, and again, before the FCC took the station away, you'd volunteer to work concerts, because out then, they were doing everybody out there. And so my job was to get the acts on stage. And I can remember 2 acts in particular. Brian Lee, this blind musician, he's got his cane, and I'm walking him, and he's kind of veering from him, and you know, you're pulling a blind guy, you know, it's kind of like working cattle a little bit. And I'm like, come on over here, and he was trying to go over here, and before you know it, he's standing on a picnic table. And it's like, I never forget that. Then one day, I have to escort John Lee Hooker to the stage. Yeah, oh yeah. John, you know, is awesome. And Mr. Hooker, and he's got 2 women on his side that are 400-pound, dressed to kill Baptist church going to the stage with John Lee Hooker. And he looks at me, and I go, Mister, we got to go. And he goes, I'm not going nowhere unless I get some cocaine and orange juice.
You gotta get it.
Okay, I'll be right back, Mr. Hooker. Mr. Hooker needs cocaine and orange juice. And we had this burnout hippie. I'll take care of it, Kev.
Yeah.
But most, you know, people, like, you get the nervous, like, people that, you know, you're going to be really nervous. And there was a lot. The one person, people say, I knew that Frank Zappa was coming on the air in Chicago, and Shemp, my producer, goes, I forgot all about it. He goes, Kevin, Frank Zappa's on the phone, and his intercom's over, and I'm going, oh, God. I'm really nervous. And I go, Chicago, please welcome Frank Zappa. Hi, Mr. Zappa. And Frank, first thing out of his mouth, he goes, do a funny voice. And immediately, I just start singing Baby Snakes as Ron Reagan. Baby snakes, late at night when we come out, baby snakes. Frank loved me. We got so close, and then, you know, the kids, we'd babysit like little Amit and Dweezil, and so that's how I met the Zappas.
Funny.
That's awesome.
Isn't that funny? Mine would be David Bowie. The time I practice in my college dorm room, I had a poster, David Bowie's Rolling Stone. You know, he made the cover of the Rolling Stone. It was a huge poster in our college dorm room. He has a green eye, or he has a brown eye and a blue eye. Okay, 2 different eyes. So I thought I get to meet David Bowie. He was a Glass Spider tour, I think. So it was in the early '80s. So. But I'm thinking, you have the most incredible eyes I've ever seen. You have the most incredible eyes I've ever seen. You have the most. So David Bowie, and sometimes they just come by on a golf cart and high five you, and that's it. Hey, David Bowie, oh shit, there you go. You know, they're gone. I mean, that's how you meet artists sometimes. But this time, and David Bowie's one is famous for that. He doesn't want to stop and talk. A golf cart, you high five him. That's your time with David Bowie. But this time, he actually was stopping and meeting everybody, and he had Frampton playing guitar for him on that tour, too, which was phenomenal. So there's Peter Frampton and David Bowie. Because Peter Frampton, my mom had to pull over the car because I said I would lick him. And my mom pulled over and went, you damn kid. Kathy Bass had to get out of the car and walk home. My mom, you damn kids, you lick David. Mom, he's beautiful, Peter Frampton. So, but back to David Bowie, so... I know, I meant kiss him. I didn't mean you damn kids, the youngest of 5, Catholic schools and everything. But on top of it, so David Bowie, you have the beautiful. So David Bowie shakes my hand, and no kidding, he looks at me and he goes, "You have the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen." And incredible. You have the most incredible. I go, "You just read my mind." Like I sounded like an idiot. Jello came out of my mouth. I swear he read my mind. To this day, I swear the man has read my mind. Genius. I swear. Seriously, he said it to me. My eyes are good. Do you get it?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I hope we're recording. I hope we're recording this. Wait.
You can use that in your podcast.
But did you lick him? In your podcast, in your little podcast. I'll be on the air tomorrow with Tony.
Oh, I'm sorry, but what?
I wanted to know if you licked him.
Peter Frampton, I got to know Peter.
That's a yes or no question, Michelle.
I know.
Yes or no, that's all I want to know.
I got to know him later. We are actually, that's the beauty of working in radio in that day. It's seriously, when you meet, you actually, now you get cell phone numbers, but then we were friends. Like, I got to know him. He toured with another band that I might or may not have been dating. So he toured with that band, and so I got to know him, and actually
Who is this?
Peter Frampton. I
So
can
what's his
actually
cell
call
number?
him right now.
Okay, call him.
I could go get my cell and
It's
call
not
Peter.
the Peter Frampton. It's the Peter Frampton in Genesis.
Sells cars.
Okay.
Peter Frampton.
Meyer
Different
in
guy.
Jennison. He works produce.
But that is like you, like you with the Zappas. I mean, you sometimes you get to know these bands
Yeah.
and you become friends. I mean,
yeah.
seriously. And when they
That's
come
really
back
great.
through, they want it. They'll talk to you and give you the interview.
They are like, God, this lady, man, she's
It's
got the weirdest
crazy.
eyes, and I said she looks great. I made her day.
I just told that story, didn't I? I'm
know.
sorry. God. Well,
Well, I wonder what time we have left. Does there anybody have any questions for these guys at all that you'd like to know? Anything? I mean, we're open.
Anything.
It doesn't matter.
anything.
What?
Way in back. You with the way in back. Harry Styles hair. Yep. No, that's a compliment. It's good hair. Okay.
Oh, that's a great question. What's the fear for you guys in radio, podcasting taking over and putting you homeless, making you homeless like I was?
Like you are.
Such a while.
Like you are. I'll tell you, if you just do radio, no, you have to do at least a podcast. You have to maybe have a YouTube channel. You have to be social network savvy. You have to have bells and whistles. Just a radio show in this day and age doesn't cut it anymore. That's the truth. You have a podcast? It's called Strangest Life I Ever Knew. Yeah, I got you. But with Jake and Brandon, which one are you? You're the Jake and Brandon. Stand up, Jake. Jake has a podcast.
So,
All right.
my suggestion for you is not only, podcasting really is old. It's like 25 years old. It's old. Incorporate the visuals too, the vodcasting, the visuals, and the technology. The technology is like rapidly changing. That little Mevo camera that is unbelievable what you can do. I got so bored, I just made my own radio station. You can stream, you can do all kinds of technology right now on your own.
Digitally, yeah. And you can make money. There's a lot of companies that will buy. Okay,
But at the same time, you got to watch out for like YouTube. I just saw the analytics on YouTube, and they're starting to censor. And especially with music, screw YouTube. Because somebody's going to see a void, and they're going to open and they're going to run down it. Same with Twitter. What they're doing is they're starting to screw with people. And if you look at Twitter and Facebook and those social, they're starting to dip down.
Anybody else?
Right over here.
Oh, there? Okay, we'll hear you.
Right here. Uh-huh.
Owned the radio waves in 1967 and 1968, and the song "I Think We're Alone Now" I think was #1 for 12 weeks in a Wow. And that was like my first indoctrination to rock and roll music. And it was a life changer. I tell you, it was a life changer. Good, bad, or indifferent. I just remember that parents didn't want kids rocking and rolling, and that gave the kids every excuse in the world to run wild and just rock and roll.
I just picked up his greatest hits on vinyl.
Yeah.
Great album. Great album.
And the guy who ran that was a DJ, and I can't remember, pardon? Bill Trapp, and Tom Quain is a blast from the past. And then he was at, maybe it was at GRD, because Bruce Grant was at GRD, and they gravitated over to Wood Radio at the time. Yeah.
Plus, you kept all your hair. Your hair. You still have your hair, dude. Good hair. Oh, God.
Here we go.
Oh, happy birthday.
happy
Look at you. You're so
birthday.
cute. He has really good hair. I swear.
We had one way in the back. Okay, you first. Yep, you.
No, it's cyclical. It happens in cycles, and hopefully Greta Van Fleet is the start of something new, because there isn't a lot of great new rock and roll out there.
you know,
but you've been listening to some.
At the same time, there's so much music happening right now that you can activate. Remember, while I was there, I put that Outlaw station on. Okay, I won that at a golf outing. I made a putt and I got the radio station. Anyways, what I'm saying is, seriously, but you take a look at what's happening like on Americana charts. There is such a surge of music, you just don't hear about it. You're not going to hear about it on traditional radio or whatever. It's out there, and what you've got to do is you've got to promote it. You got to promote it.
I agree with you, though. Rock isn't having a moment. I mean, if you look, classic rock is having a throwback moment right now, for sure, if you look at advertising. But I'll tell you what's having the biggest moment right now that just surpassed all of everything combined is hip-hop and rap right now. And that is the biggest, that is the screw the man kind of moment that's happening right now. And if you're into screw you kind of lyrics, that's it. You know?
Today, today on my podcast, I'm working with Jimmy Chamberlain. He's a drummer for Smashing Pumpkins. And what we're doing is we're answering that question. We're going to take independent artists from all genres. And what we're going to do is we are going to vodcast. And what's happening is the fans will attract all these people. And so it's unbelievable what you can do if you just start to cultivate. And then fans start telling fans, and fans start telling fans. Look at how many bands out, like Humphreys McGee, for example. They're selling out shows. You know, God bless them. You know, they're selling out shows. Fish, they don't get radio airplay. They're selling out shows. Look at Jimmy Buffett.
Look at Radiohead. Never got
you know
one
what I'm
thing
so
played on the radio.
Rock it's pretty interesting. It's still out there. It's still out there.
You had a question there, right there, yes.
Oh, dude. You know what? I'll tell you the truth. I was thinking of that. And Michelle wasn't a big Beatles fan. The Beatles, you know, it was the Stones. It was the
Stones for
Stones.
me.
And we were talking about the British invasion. To me, I was reading a Quincy Jones interview today, and he's saying that the Beatles are just horrid musicians. Yeah, that's kind of tough. That's kind of tough. But at the same time, you take a look at the influences of the Rolling Stones, and I love them. the Stones.
I would have
and
to
what
say
they
the
did.
Stones too. Longevity. There's something to be said about longevity too. I mean, they're still out there doing it, and people are still paying a lot of money, and they're packing huge arenas to go see this band that started in 1963.
Well, I went to Catholic schools. It's Father, Son, Holy, Mick, period.
And at the same time, I think with the British invasion, I was thinking they are so lucky that one, that they recorded at Abbey Road because of the equipment makes all the difference in the world, plus George Martin. To me, that I can remember I wasn't a big Beatles fan until Abbey Road. And then all of a sudden I was listening to how that music was sagging into one another on the Sun medley. And I know that that influenced Pink Floyd and Dark Side of the Moon. Today, you look at Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix had an English-American band, Bold as the Axis, came out in 1967. Jimmy hit it big over in London, and he was turning on people of Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker. And you know that he influenced those bands. Out comes Black Sabbath, and I can remember listening to Paranoid in 1970. It was.
What about you, Andy? Beatles or?
Beatles, I'm the different guy. I'm the Beatles, because that was a big, when I was there, and the influence they had, and it was a rude awakening, and it really changed the music scene. It opened the door for so many other groups, so I'd have to lean that way.
And I would too. I mean, I love the Stones, but just musically, I like the Beatles' music better. Nothing against it. The Stones have their heritage and what they've done, but just listen to both sides. That'd be my choice.
What about you? You didn't tell us. Which are
Yes.
you? Oh, obviously you're the Stones. That would be Rolling Stones. Okay.
That's a trick question.
And we got a
Okay. How many shows have
Dave
you
Adams
been to?
with the Beatles shirt on.
Jeez, Lou.
All right, we got time for some more questions. Way in the back.
Well, it's in the cloud.
In
A lot
your
of it's in the
phone.
cloud.
Let's
Yeah.
And
repeat his
it
question.
is moving to vinyl.
Let's repeat his question for the
Yeah,
Facebook.
I think it'll
people.
definitely go back to vinyl, but it's in the cloud. And what I hate about the cloud, I don't download Apple anymore, and I haven't, just because it's so compressed. It can't be MP3s, WAV files, or whatnot. Somebody's going to think. I think it is going to be vinyl. Everybody is releasing stuff on vinyl. Unfortunately, it can be expensive because they've got to reboot all that stuff.
But digitally, I mean, everything, I just downloaded Seeger's new album to my phone in a minute, because I wanted to hear it. But yeah, so digitally, I mean, that's where it is
Vinyl
right
too,
now.
they're using 180 gram. It's a thicker album. It's a better quality album than you buy something that was out. Yeah. So
And a lot of the artists are actually going back and they're remastering the masterpieces, and it's closer to analog than ever. Like Fleetwood Mac Rumors, the new remaster, you're hearing stuff that you never heard before. Queen did the same thing. Pink Floyd just got done doing the same thing. Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin. Yes, it is another mechanism to make you buy their music that you already have. But when you go back and listen to it,
Analog is coming back,
Yes.
though,
for
huge, big
sure.
time.
For sure.
But Chris Robinson, he from the Black Rose, he saw that market. He started buying up analog tape decades ago, so it's really hard to get. But they are starting to make analog tape, so I think things are going to go back to analog.
How does the unscratched old vinyl?
You know the soap and water thing, though, right? Everybody remember that? I remember the first time I washed I used to slip cue. We played albums in college. We played albums at GRD too. But we washed them with hot soap and water. It was the weirdest thing. But no, you're screwed if they're scratched. Can't wash scratch out of them. Nope.
Funny.
Anybody else? Right over here.
They're not. You know, and I'm proud. My son's in Dawes. He's out in L.A. and da-da-da-da-da. And they're on tour, and the money's really hard to come by. You know, it's that's how come bands are going to tour. That's how come I'm really shocked. I just saw today Ozzy Osbourne, you know, he's not going to tour. And these bands are literally going out until they drop dead. Look at Donald Fagen from Steely Dan. He'd love to retire, but the royalties shifted and they're going to go out. And unfortunately, bands have to go out, and there's no such thing as a record label anymore. There's no such thing as a contract. They'll go out and they're going to tour and tour and tour. That's how come you got to support local, local, local. And I want local people to get airplay.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They got to go out and tour, and they got to make money on merchandise, and they got to sell their stuff. You know, go out and buy the stuff when they're on tour. That's where they're gonna get the most support.
The recording studio is a thing of the past now. They're doing it in their living rooms. I mean, you know, and that's how they're making
But you
music.
can't do drums in your living room.
No, you can't.
You know what I mean?
Well, I have a drum set in my living room, so you can.
But again, no, in all honesty, you can go ahead. I need drums. I need an analog tape machine to get my drums and bounce it down. But you take somebody that is, again, you take some of these bands that are selling out arenas, they're making money. Look at Susan Tedeschi and Derek Trucks. Yep. God bless them. Great musicians. They're not getting the support they need, yet they're killing it. They're absolutely killing it. I hope they become billionaires.
It has become cheaper for musicians to make music in the living room or the basement with a laptop and a fairly cheap mixing program and what's called an interface unit, which I actually have one I don't record music. I do obviously voice stuff. But
why do you have the drums?
I have because I was a drummer. Was also in the marching band.
You know.
There it is.
How many band geeks are here? How's a band geek? All right.
And I did the cymbals.
Couple more questions. Anybody else? Right here?
I will answer that question. The NFL, primary target, adults 25-54. WLAV, primary target, adults 25-54. Sunday night, 6 a.m. to midnight, vast wasteland of 0 ratings because adults 25-54 on Sunday nights are watching football or getting their kids ready to go to school. We're there for the beer run, actually, but it's because it's the demos. That's why we also play some specialty programming on Sunday nights, something that's just a little bit different. Little Steven's Underground Garage, Off the Record Flashback. But actually, the NFL games
money.
have
Money.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's all about money.
there it is.
I mean, we
It pays
are
us
a
a lot of money,
for-profit company.
It's all about content. Give me a radio station. Give me the worst radio station in any city. Give it to me. Let me do what I want. I'll make it number one. Simple as that. It's all about content.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about content. You can do it on a radio frequency. You can do it on an internet. You can do it on your phone. You can do it. It's all about content.
Good content is good content.
I remember years ago when I was working at CUZ and NASCAR, I think it's still big, but it was really big in the early 90s. That's when you had all the drivers, Dale Earnhardt and everybody. And I suggested, so why don't we put the NASCAR race on Sunday afternoons? I mean, people are watching the race, country music, NASCAR can win it. And it kind of butt heads a little bit, but finally they did it, and that was the start of all. It just made sense. Sunday afternoons, you're right. On radio, it's just death. You might as well put something on there that somebody wants to listen to, and I mean, NFL does pretty well. One way back here. Oh,
Question right here. Yeah.
80s rocked.
Yeah.
That's my
Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, come on, yeah.
Who do you like?
hair bands.
Yeah. The 80s are actually popular. I mean, we've actually added a lot of stuff that we may have played at the very beginning, but didn't play for a long time, like some Poison and
Queen, Kiss, AC/DC.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
You know what, though?
that's saying.
At the same time, you take Jan Hammer, Miami Vice, Hello. You take a look at what's new on Netflix, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
All that 80s stuff is coming back.
Yeah.
All that stuff is coming back. I guarantee you are going to hear the surge of that 80s sound coming back starting this summer.
Well-
and it'll go for about a year.
Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, those soundtracks are great, you know, and a lot of those songs are songs that we played or do play today.
80s songs
you
can
know,
make me cry,
one
too.
interesting
A lot
thing-
of guilty pleasures.
You cry all the time. One interesting thing, a band in the 80s, you brought up Bon Jovi. LAV played Bon Jovi. GRD played Bon Jovi. Hair bands were
horrible
pop
band.
music. I know, but I'm just saying the 80s, the
Horrible,
hair bands,
horrible
the
band.
John Bon Jovi has the best teeth in the business.
horrible,
He's so
okay.
cute.
It's
Anyway,
great for crab fishing.
you two, I mean,
Okay.
Madonna.
really
Madonna was my jam.
Well,
Who's your favorite 80s
Way in
band?
the back there, go ahead.
It's that stuff,
Thought I had 'em.
just stuff that makes me cry. Oh.
Sometimes
Zip it.
That gentleman right
trying
there
to
in the-
think.
in the sweater, yes, sir.
Del Shannon rocks.
Coopersville.
Local hero.
Yeah, local hero. Coopersville, Del Shannon. I mean,
What do you think of him?
Had a sad ending, but yeah, he was a real trendsetter. Yeah.
And he was rescued by Tom Petty, and it's so sad that we lost Tom Petty.
So sad.
Oh, yeah.
Every time you go away. Every time you go away, that song.
Paul
Love
Young.
it.
That's
Yeah,
Paul Young.
Paul Young
Yeah.
still makes me cry.
You know what? The other one is
Soft
the other.
Cell,
Wait,
all that
while we're
stuff
on the
now.
Prince too. You can't not say Prince in the '80s. Period. End of sentence. Yes.
One more question. Well, two, you guys side by side. We'll take you on the right first.
Oh, Jim. Jim is not dead. I had to say that. It was a security question. Being in the Jerry Ford Museum, I was told somebody's going to ask you about Jim, say he's dead, but I got clearance. Jim got his own casino on Beaver Island, and it's on an Indian reservation. They're allowed to sell not only medical marijuana but medical meth. And you can hear Jim on the podcast, and all you have to do is go to doll.com, stevedoll.com, and you can hear Jim.
Wait,
He's
you
doing
can
well.
see Jim is
And you can
also
see Jim.
animated. There's
Yes.
been a guy who animated Jim Shorts. There's animated Jim Shorts specials.
Jim is coming to, have you ever, Funny or Die? Okay, like Family Guy, Jim his life is based out of the Hotel Tokyo in Chicago and the casino up on Beaver Island, but it is coming like Family Guy. I hope he takes over the world.
Not really like Family Guy, but close.
I want him to kill Family Guy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, totally awesome. Kick him off the air or just hang up. Or you know what I used to do? It would go nowhere, and you could take the signal out, and they couldn't hear you, and so you can go, this guy sucks. Don't go to his concert. Don't buy a ticket. Let's six, and then you go back. Fantastic. Can you tell me how that tour is doing? You know? I love people that really, that wanted to come in and, they
want to
care.
bring something.
Yeah.
Weird Al Yankovic was I interviewed him one time in the 80s. He was great. I interviewed him maybe 15 years ago. It was, okay, his parents died maybe the week before, but it was terrible. And when we were done, we're like, that was the worst thing ever. And the other thing we have done, if there's an
Did you
interview.
stay with it? See, I'm
No,
like
you
going,
bail.
I'm sorry, you know what?
We're having
we got a
difficult
bad
hearing you.
phone line. We're going to have to call you back, and then you hang up on them over the air and go, we're not calling
But
them
if
back,
there's an interview
obviously.
that you don't want to do, but you have to do it because somebody jams it down your throat, we'll roll the dice. And if I get a 4, I can only ask 4-word questions. And then what happened? And whoever I'm working with, Tony in this case, if he gets a 2, he'll go, and then, you can only ask that amount of words, and that makes it for a really short interview. It's called Roll the Dice Interview, and it's brilliant.
Well, we want to thank you for coming out tonight. We hope you enjoyed
Thank you very
it.
much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. God bless you.
Thank you.
So thank you for all for coming out tonight. How about another round of applause for everybody here?
All right, I've been informed I have some really good news. I've got two pieces of good news. First of all, we're going to give some wonderful gifts to our guests here. But the good news I have, I've been informed that we have pizza left. So if anybody would like an extra piece, I think we might be able to help you with that. Also, the Jet Beats are coming back. They're going to play for another hour. The exhibit is open up until 9:30 tonight. If you haven't already had a chance to take a look at that, please do. We're not done for the night. Hope you hang around. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. Enjoy the exhibit.